Imagine a world where every nation is sinking under a mountain of money they owe. The United States alone is buried under more than $38 trillion in debt. Europe adds another 14 trillion, Japan piles on 9 trillion, and when you add it all up globally, we're talking over $315 trillion. That's 3 times bigger than the whole world's economy. Year after year, governments keep borrowing more, and the interest they have to pay just keeps growing. It's like a clock ticking faster and faster. But here's the big question no one seems to ask. If every country owes so much, who exactly are they borrowing from? Who has the power to lend to the entire planet? And what does this mean for how our money system will work in the years ahead? To get to the bottom of this, we need to face an uncomfortable truth. Debt isn't just about one person owing another. It's the foundation of how our modern world runs. It fuels countries, big companies, and even our money itself. It's like an invisible glue holding everything together, but it's also slowly tearing things apart. Let's break it down from the start. When a government spends more than it takes in through taxes or other income, it creates debt. To fill that hole, it sells things called government bonds. These are basically promises to pay back the money later with interest. People buy these bonds. Investors, banks, retirement funds, insurance companies, and sometimes even other countries. Every dollar a nation borrows is a dollar someone else is saving. So a country's debt is really someone else's investment. At first, it looks straightforward. Countries borrow from the markets, and markets lend to countries. But dig a little deeper, and things get weird. Take the United States, the most indebted place on Earth. About 70% of its debt is owned by Americans themselves. Banks, retirement funds, insurance firms, rich people, and investment groups who see these bonds as safe bets. Foreign nations like China and Japan own a chunk, but it's just a small part. In Europe, it's similar. Most debt is held by European banks and groups. Japan's situation is even more extreme. Nearly 90% is owned by their own government, banks, and central bank. So, who does the world really owe money to? The answer is simple. The world owes money to itself. Our global economy is like a huge loop where everyone is connected, depending on each other, and it's getting more tangled every year. It's not just a straight line from lender to borrower. It's a complex web. But this leads to an even bigger puzzle. If countries owe their own financial systems, then who do those banks and funds owe money to? Because they borrow all the time too. That's where the real story unfolds. To find the true lender of the world, we have to explore the 3 main levels of global debt, and maybe even a 4th. First level, government debt, which looks like independence but isn't. On the surface, governments borrow from financial markets. But where does the market get its cash? Not just from you or me as everyday savers. It comes from retirement funds using workers' savings, insurance pools from monthly payments, and millions of people who don't even know they're helping fund their own government's borrowing. In a way, government debt is like everyone in a community lending to their own leaders. Retirees are lending to younger generations, workers to politicians they didn't vote for. But this is just the start. Second level, bank debt, the real driver of money creation. Banks don't just hold your money, they make it up. When you get a loan, the bank doesn't give you someone else's savings. It just adds numbers to your account and calls it a loan. New money out of nothing. Worldwide, over 90% of all money is created this way, not by governments or central banks, but by regular banks through lending. So, a huge chunk of global debt is owed to the banking system itself. And banks owe money to other banks, central banks, people with deposits, and big investors. The more you look, the fuzzier the lines get. Third level, central banks, the hidden lenders. At the heart of it all are central banks like the Federal Reserve in the US, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and China's People's Bank. These groups can create money with just a click on a computer. They don't lend like regular banks. They print currency, which is the base of our whole money system, during tough times. Like the crises in 2008, 2020, and 2023. They pumped out trillions to keep things steady. They bought government bonds, company bonds, home loans bundled together, and sometimes even stocks. Now central banks own hundreds of trillions in assets. They're not just backup lenders anymore. They're the top creditors of the world. But wait, there's more. Behind all this, central banks, governments, and institutions. There's one final, unseen creditor. The real power behind global debt. You can't see the future, but it's there. Economists don't talk about this much, but debt isn't owed to banks. countries, or rich people. It's owed to the future. When a government borrows, it's not today's people who pay the bill. It's tomorrow's taxpayers, workers, and kids who inherit promises they didn't make. Debt isn't just a money swap. It's shifting burdens from now to later. So the true creditor isn't a bank or a nation or a tycoon. It's time itself. We borrow from tomorrow to keep today going. We trade future wealth for present comfort. That's why global debt keeps climbing. Our economies are built to grow forever. But when real growth stalls, debt steps in as a quick fix. It replaces hard work, new ideas, and smart choices. But every loan has to be paid back, either in cash or through tough outcomes. Now you might wonder, if the world owes money to itself, why does all this debt still matter? Why do experts warn it's risky, even if it's mostly internal? The reason is clear. Debt isn't just numbers, it's pressure. It pushes governments to hike taxes, slash spending, or print more money. It forces central banks to keep interest rates low. It makes people accept rising prices. It demands markets keep booming endlessly. As debt grows, so does the pressure, and eventually, it becomes too much. History proves it. The Roman Empire fell apart from debt-fueled inflation. The French Revolution sparked from a broke nation. The Weimar Republic in Germany collapsed under huge war debts. Argentina has defaulted 9 times. Greece almost wrecked the euro in 2010. No country, empire, or money system is safe. And here's the part experts don't admit often. Debt breeds dependence. Countries rely on lenders. Banks depend on central banks. Governments count on inflation. People get hooked on a system that must always expand, even when it can't. The whole global setup becomes shaky, like a tower on quicksand. This brings us to a scary final point. Who really runs the world? If nations owe their systems, systems owe central banks, and central banks owe the future, then who controls the global economy? The answer, no one. The system runs itself. An endless cycle of borrowing, spending, printing, inflating, and borrowing again. It's a machine with no stop button. Debt is now the world's core program. But every system has limits, and right now, those limits are being pushed. Higher interest rates, slower growth, fewer workers, world tensions, and price hikes are all crashing together. The global debt machine is nearing a breaking point. Not because one country will crash, or one bank will fail, or one currency will drop, but because the idea that the future can always cover today's costs is running out of space. Let's circle back to that key question we started with. If every nation on the planet is buried in debt, who exactly is the lender? It's not the United States, China, the International Monetary Fund, big banks, or even the wealthiest people. The true lender is something we can't see or touch, the future itself. And that future might not be strong enough to carry the heavy burden we're placing on it. You see, we're not just taking out loans for cash. We're borrowing stability, precious time, and the risky belief that our world can keep growing without end. But sooner or later, whether it's a decade from now, a year, or even tomorrow, that future will show up to collect what's owed. And when it does, the price tag will dwarf any number scribbled on a government's financial reports. This is the tough reality we all have to confront, and it forces us to think about how we can build a more sustainable path forward for everyone.